disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use as a use permitted it by the copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my channel. I am Afro. Please do me a favor as you enter the room and hit that thumbs up button for me. I really appreciate it. Now, today's video, we're going to talk about how did the British Empire become the largest in the world. Ooh, this is going to be interesting, right? Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the video.
An empire where the sun never sets. That is how the modern world called the largest nation in the history of mankind, the British Empire. How did a small island country manage to occupy such a vast territory until the middle of the 19th century and become the most powerful nation in the world? This video will tell you about the history of the most powerful of all colonial empires. The foundation of the power of the British Empire was laid by its co-founder, England. The Kingdom of England was an island country that often fought, and therefore paid considerable attention to the development of a professional army and navy, which then dominated the oceans and greatly facilitated colonization. The first conquered and colonized land since the 16th century was Ireland. The processes of colonization were accelerated by a large number of poor inhabitants and the early development of capitalist relations. This contributed to the accumulation of financial assets in the hands of future colonizers. In 1707, Scotland and England were united as the Kingdom of Great Britain. This alliance allowed for additional financial and human resources for British expansion throughout the world. As early as the late 15th century, the first English ships, led by Giovanni Caboto, explored the coast of North America. The first English colony was established in Newfoundland Island, 1583. The initiative of colonization belonged to the private business. The first successful continental colony, Jamestown, was founded in 1607 by members of the Virginia Joint Stock Company. Over time, the colonists were joined by religious fanatics, finders, and outcasts who founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony, 1620. Barbados in the Caribbean, 1627. Maryland, 1632, Connecticut, 1636, and Rhode Island, 1638. The advance of the English colonists was complicated by military conflicts with the local Indians. However, the newcomers dominated in weaponry and technology, and thus conquered and seized new territories. The British soon succeeded in capturing Belize, 1638, Jamaica, 1655, and the Mosquito Coast, 1655. Over time,
Well, okay, this is new to me. The British was all over the place. Oh, the British was very busy, I see. Connecticut, Rhode Island. You know, I didn't know that. I didn't know none of this. But I know now. So we're here. Let's finish. Let's get into this. Wow. Amazing.
England took over the Netherlands, the territories of present-day New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, 1664. England also colonized the territories of Carolina, 1662. The development of Rupert's Land from 1670 was carried out by the Hudson's Bay Company. Furs, valuable timber, and fish.
Well, I will say this. This explains why the United States and England are allies. This explains it. I didn't even know all of this at first, but now I know. This is interesting. Anyway, back to the video.
were shipped from the northern colonies of the east coast of America to England. The central colonies mainly supplied tobacco and sugar. The southern colonies of the Caribbean supplied tobacco, cane sugar, coffee, and chocolate. England received about 20% of the American colonies' revenues and also actively exploited them through the Navigation Act of 1663, which prohibited the colonies from trading with other countries, bypassing English ports. In all English colonies except Rupert's Land and Newfoundland, the labor of the black slaves was used. The latter were brought there from the west coast of Africa. In the 18th century, Britain continued to be enriched by the exploitation of continental American colonies. British troops were kept at the expense of American colonists in the New World during the 7 Years' War, in which France ceded Canada to Britain in 1763. After the war, the British government decided to compensate post-war budget shortage by substantially increasing taxes for the American colonists. For example, discriminatory stamp duty was introduced, according to which the processing of trade contracts and testaments was 5 times more expensive in America than in England. In addition, there were harmful acts of navigation and high taxes on imported tea, coffee, and other vital goods. All this, coupled with the lack of political representation of Americans in the British Parliament, pushed the latter to revolt and start the Revolutionary War, which began in 1775 and ended in 1783, with the victory of the newly formed United States and Britain losing its 13 American colonies. All other American possessions remained the property of Great Britain. In the early 17th century, the British challenged Portuguese domination of India, which was rich in gold, diamonds, and spices. The English East India Company was founded in 1600. It was a joint stock company with the exclusive rights to trade with India and have its own army, territory, administration, and autonomy in the conduct of its military affairs and business. This company secured lucrative trade contracts with the Mughal Empire. The English East India Company also established a colony in Surat and founded Madras in 1640. A few years later, 1645, the company obtained the right of monopoly trade in Bengal and established several settlements and factories there. In 1663, thanks to the marriage diplomacy of King Charles II of England, the British succeeded in annexing Bombay. In 1690, the English East India Company founded the city of Calcutta. Thus, until the late 17th century, the British
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's too many dates. It's too many places. I am getting a headache trying to keep up with all of this. I kid you not. Again, history is my subject. But however, I'm catching a headache. But it's interesting though. Back to the video.
British established a number of strongholds on the Indian coast. The disintegration of the Mughal Empire and internecine wars between Indian princes contributed to the further advance and entrenching of the British in India. In 1757, at the Battle of Plassey, the British East India Company defeated the French and their Indian allies and de facto conquered Bengal. The British conquered India by imposing subsidiary treaties under which the Indian monarchs became puppets of the British East India Company and were obliged to maintain a mercenary British army at their own expense. These private armies were made up of sepoys who were contracted from local Indians. In addition, under these treaties, the princes lost the right to have their own troops and an independent foreign policy. Also, they were obliged to provide a monopoly for the East India Company. During the Anglo-Mysore Wars, 1767 to 1799, the British were able to occupy much of the divided and multi-ethnic South India thanks to military advantage and a policy of confrontation which they applied to the local chiefs. In addition, Britain captured Sri Lanka from the Dutch in 1796. The Maratha Confederacy's attempt to resist the East India Company's invasion of central and western India turned into 3 wars. During the Second War, 1803 to 1805, and the Third War, 1817 to 1819, the British defeated the Marathas and conquered their territories. The last non-indigenous people in India were the Sikhs, against whom 2 wars were waged. In the latter, in 1849, the British East India Company defeated and took control of all of India. However, high taxes, British racism against the Indians, and the impoverishment of the locals due to the arbitrariness of the East India Company officials created a climate of hostility towards the British.
Just when I thought that America was bad and stealing and just being bullies, oh, Britain is no better. You guys are the same. No wonder we get along just fine, because we're one of the same. Interesting. Woo. I love it. All right, y'all. Back to the video.
The spark that ignited a powder keg of Hindu discontent and provoked a mutiny of sepoys was the introduction of new weapons, ammo that was kind of smeared with pig or cow grease. This was not acceptable to the Hindu Muslims and other Hindus who had been recruited by the East India Company. The Sepoys riot broke out in 1857 and quickly escalated into a national uprising, in which the rebels proclaimed the heir of the Mughals, Bahadur Shah II, as their leader, captured Delhi and central India, and massacred European civilians. The British, supported by some local Indian lords, succeeded in defeating the rebellion a year later at the cost of transferring extra troops across Persia and the Atlantic. Britain regained control of India and abolished the administration of the land by the East India Company due to corruption and inefficiency of the latter. Established in India, the British moved to expand their influence in southwestern Asia. Firstly, they received the island of Penang from the Malay Kedah Sultanate in 1787. Britain soon captured Java and the Malay Peninsula, 1795, from the Netherlands, and then, 1818, bought Singapore from the Sultan of Johor. In 1824, Java was returned to the Netherlands. The British left some parts of the Malay Peninsula with the local sultans as puppet rulers. On the other side of the peninsula, they established the colony of Straits Settlements. Because of the killing of his merchants in Yangon in 1824 and the invasion of India by Burmese troops, the East India Company began the First War, 1824 to 1826, with Burma. The war ended with the occupation of Yangon and the victory of the British because of their technical superiority. The Burmese king paid £1 million and ceded the province of Arakan to the East India Company, which also gained commercial privileges in the defeated state. The Second Anglo-Burmese War broke out in 1851, and a year later ended with the capture of Yangon and Peru, as well as a crushing defeat of the Burmese. The British gained commercial privileges and occupied the entire Burmese coast. British relations with Qing China, which had almost completely closed its ports to European trade since the middle of the 18th century, proved difficult. As a result, European merchants were forced to obtain most of the popular Chinese goods, porcelain, ceramics, silk, and tea, by smuggling. The East India Trading Company decided to exchange Chinese goods for Indian opium in these illicit transactions. The massive distribution of this drug in China, with sales amounting to 308 tons in the early 19th century, prompted the Chinese authorities to expel English merchants completely and confiscate their property. First and foremost, of course, was the seizure of opium stocks. The British elite viewed this move as an unacceptable blow to their commercial interests and launched the First Opium War against China in 1842. The British landing force numbered around 8,000 people and inflicted severe defeats on the weak Chinese army, which was far inferior in armament and discipline to the Europeans, though numbered around 220,000 soldiers. During the confrontation, the British army destroyed the Chinese emperor's fleet, captured Guangzhou, Xiamen, Zhejiang province, and Shanghai, and threatened Beijing. The emperor surrendered and signed the Treaty of Nanjing. under which China paid $21 million, allowed British traders and their goods without restrictions, and ceded Hong Kong to Britain. On his first trip to the Southern Hemisphere, 1768 to 1771, James Cook explored the coasts of Australia and New Zealand. He declared these lands British possessions. In 1788, the first group of British colonists, most of whom were prisoners, landed in Sydney Harbour and founded the first British colony on the continent, New South Wales. This colony was later extended to all of eastern Australia and was used by Britain to exile prisoners and explore this strategically important continent. In 1803, the British settlement of Van Diemen's Land began, and eventually a colony of Tasmania was established. The first colony in Western Australia, Swan River, was established in 18...
Ooh, this is too much. This is too much. Oh my God. I love history, but this is too much. So now I have to ask, being that Britain has claimed a lot of places, you know, back then and stuff like that, do they own the U.S.? I'm just saying. Because they spread all over the place. They conquered this, conquered that, you know, made China give them money, like all kinds of stuff. I didn't even know this stuff. I didn't know. But this is really, really interesting. You can see I'm very excited about it, you know, because I like learning something that I didn't know. And I like learning difficult shit, because this stuff is too much for my brain to handle right now. But I'm into it. So let's get back into the video, shall we?
As Australia's coastal territories were poor in minerals and the soil was not very fertile, the number of people willing to relocate to Kangaroo's homeland was minimal. The situation changed slightly with the discovery of gold and diamonds in Central Australia in 1850. Since that time, the most profitable business for the Australian colonists has been the extraction of gold, sheep farming, and the harvesting of valuable wood. Part of the profit has traditionally gone to the budget of Great Britain. New Zealand, visited by James Cook on his first voyage, was formally incorporated into New South Wales in 1788, but settled much slower. The reason for the slow European settlement of the islands was the militant Maori tribes, who had been known as fierce warriors and cannibals. In 1825, the New Zealand Company was established to purchase Maori land, colonize the islands, and establish Wellington and Nelson. The Treaty of Waitangi in 1840 gave white colonists the right to buy land from Maori, while the latter retained rights to their lands and accepted British sovereignty. However, the English sales terms differed from the Maori sales terms in the text. This led to nearly 30 years of land war between Maori and colonists in 1843, who was supported by the British Army. The Europeans had won, and the indigenous islanders had lost most of their land. Thanks to its strong navy, professional disciplined army, skillful business initiatives, and successful diplomacy, Great Britain managed to seize a huge amount of land on all continents except Antarctica. The British also managed to create the largest empire in human history. In the mid-18th century, it included Ireland, virtually the entire east and north of North America, islands in the Caribbean, Belize, Mosquito Coast, and factories on the coast of India and Bengal. Despite the secession of the United States, by the mid-19th century, the British had succeeded in significantly increasing their holdings. Now, apart from Ireland, Canada, islands in the Caribbean, Belize, and the Mosquito Coast, the British colonial empire included British Guiana, the Cape Colony, all of India, Sri Lanka, Burma's coastline, the Malay Island, Australia, and New Zealand.
Ooh-wee. Now that was a lot, but very interesting. But all of these dates, throwing all of these dates and places and times, and oh, it's giving me a headache. But I like this video. I did. I like this video a lot. So yeah, wow. Great Britain, y'all conquered a lot of stuff, don't you think? Anyway, y'all, thank you everyone for tuning into my channel. Please hit the thumbs up, like, share my video, and look forward to more of my reaction videos. Please leave a comment because I love reading people's comments. I like to know what it is that you guys, have to say. So until next time, everybody, please stay safe. Peace. Afro Goddess is out.